Okay, guys, please don't forget your cameras. All right. So today and this week, we're gonna be working on the listening section. So today we'll get started with the listening section and we'll be working on it this week. Okay? Listening section. First of all, I'd like to say that, well, as you may already know, in the listening section, everything you will have to do is answer questions and they're all multiple choice. So it's not, I would say it's one of the easiest sections, especially for students who practice enough and are good in speaking and listening, but we're gonna see. Okay, guys, please don't forget your cameras, those of you who just joined. And we're gonna see. Now, the listening section is somehow connected to the reading section. Remember that reading and listening are the two first sections in your test. Now, how are these two sections connected? You will always, no matter what, have an extra tasks or extra questions, and they could go either in the reading or in the listening. So if you have a shorter reading section, your reading section is short, relatively short. You only have you only have 3 passages in the reading, as you can see on my screen now. So if you have the shortest version of the reading section, then you will have the extra tasks in the listening. If you don't have them in the reading, you will have them in the listening. But if you have the longer version of the reading, so if you have 4 passages in the reading, then the listening will be shorter for you. So it depends. I couldn't tell you exactly how many questions you will have in the listening because it will depend on whether you have your extra tasks in the listening or in the reading. If you have them in the reading, then you're going to have only 5 tasks in the listening section or 5 questions, 5 sets of questions. And if you have them in the listening, then you will have 7 tasks or 7 sets of questions. Okay? Now, out of these sets of questions that I'm talking about, you will be hearing both conversations and you will be hearing lectures. Okay, so in the conversations, you will hear 2 people speak about a certain thing. You have to pay attention, take notes, and answer questions. And in the lectures, remember what a lecture was? Does anyone know what a lecture is?
It's like a class.
Exactly. So in the lectures, you can imagine that you're a student in a university because you will be hearing a class given by a certain professor. So you could have a biology class, a science class, or maybe a literature class, many different topics, but a university class. So those are the 2 things that you will be having in the listening section, conversations and lectures. And each conversation or each lecture contains a certain amount of questions, okay? If you have 5 sets of questions, if you have 5 tasks in the listening, then you will be given a total of 41 minutes for the entire listening section. They don't give you like, let's say, a separate timer for each conversation or each lecture. It's the same as in the reading. You get a timer for the entire listening section. It's completely up to you how you manage your time. However, though, I wouldn't really worry too much about managing your time in the listening, because honestly, I think no students struggle with timing in the listening. That is usually the problem for the reading, not the listening. Okay, so you'll be okay with time, it's more than enough. And if you have 7 tasks, you'll be having 57 minutes. So 41 minutes if you have or if you get 5 tasks, and 57 if you get 7. Is that okay? That means that you should be spending around 8 minutes per audio file. So you listen to a conversation and you should be using 8 minutes to answer the questions from the conversation. You listen to a lecture and you should be using only 8 minutes to answer the lecture questions. Okay, so just memorize this number. 8 minutes is a good amount of time to be spending answering the questions per se. Is this okay so far? Do you get the idea of how the structure of the listening is? Any questions? So what we're gonna do is, since we have the entire week to work on this, today and tomorrow, we're gonna be focusing on conversations, and Tuesday and Friday, sorry, will be for the lectures. Okay, so today we're gonna do the theory of conversations, tomorrow we practice, and on Thursday we do lectures. Okay, so today we're only gonna focus on conversations. Okay, guys, so how will these conversations work? And the good thing is that it's always gonna be the same. These conversations are gonna be held between a student and a campus worker. So that means an employee within the university where the student is studying. So you will be hearing a student and somebody that works at the university talk about something. Now, what do they talk about? So this student goes to X university. One of the options, one thing you can have, and this is usually the most common type of conversation you hear, you can have a problem and advice. So basically, the student has a problem. The student has a problem with something related to college life, to the academic life with the university. The student has a problem. So for example, what do you guys think? What could be a problem that students have when going to university and living on campus? Can you imagine a situation where a student could have a problem?
Yeah, I have a situation. For example, I made my internship, and after 6 months, the company that I when I where I want where I did my internship didn't want to give me the papers, the documents, and that was a huge problem.
Okay, good. So yes, that's a good example of something that could happen here. So maybe this student did an internship. Maybe they don't want to provide the student with the paper so that maybe he or she can validate that internship in the university. So that could be a problem. So imagine the situation. The student is going to go to talk to a campus worker about this. So who do you think the campus worker could be in that case, in that scenario? Would it be a professor? Would it be the secretary? Would it be the academic advisor? Who do you think the student would go to talk to if that was the problem?
Academic advisor?
Probably, right? Maybe the student would be talking to the academic advisor because it's something related to the academic work, right? Now, if the student had a problem with an assignment, maybe with the grades for an assignment, maybe the student doesn't really understand why he got, I don't know, an F in a certain paper he did. Who do you think the student will go to talk to this about?
Professor?
The professor, great. So as you can see, those campus workers could be anyone really that works in campus. Could be the academic advisor, we said, could be a professor from a certain class. If the student maybe wants to do an exchange program, who do you think they're gonna go and talk to? Who could it be?
Secretary?
I'm sorry?
Secretary?
Maybe, yeah, could be. Maybe the secretary, but from like the international office, right? So maybe they will go there. Let's say the student has a problem with the house. Maybe the student has a problem with their roommate. So they don't like the roommate they have and they want to change dorms. In that case, the student is gonna go and talk to probably the housing office. So that is the kind of thing that you can have. That is one very common type of conversation. The student has a problem and tries to go and talk to somebody about the problem, obviously somebody that works in the university, and this person is supposed to give the student some advice. So it's supposed to be helpful with the student, help them solve their problem by giving them choices, by giving them suggestions, options, things that they can do, you know? So that is one very common type of conversation. Any questions so far about this? Now, the second common type of conversations that you can have is when the student just wants to have some information. So the student requires information, let's say. So sometimes it isn't really a problem. The student doesn't really want or need something or has a problem, but instead the student just wants to be informed about something. So maybe the student wants to join a club and he or she wants to see like what are the requirements to join the club, what are the schedules, how it works, or what days they need, maybe the prices, I don't know. So maybe the student just wants to do something, wants to join a club, maybe the student wants to study abroad for a semester, and the same thing requires information. Maybe you have a new student or a transfer student that's coming into the university, and maybe the student doesn't really know anything about how the library works. So the student will go and talk to the librarian in that case, and the librarian is going to provide information, the information that the student requires, right? Same thing, the librarian. Another example. So same thing, the campus worker is supposed to be helpful and give the information to the student, provide the student with the information they need. So those are the two types of conversations that you will always have. It's always going to be between a student and somebody that works in the university. So is that okay? Do you have any questions about this? Okay, guys. So that's it. Now, you are supposed to take notes. And I mean, you are allowed to take notes throughout the entire TOEFL test. But in the listening section, it is even way more important to take notes. Because if you don't take notes, then you're just relying on your memory only. And, well, that isn't always such an accurate or such a precise thing to do. So you are supposed to take notes. Remember, we said there are two types of tasks that you'll have, conversations and lectures. Honestly speaking, I would dare to say that for the conversations, you could even answer the questions without even taking notes. Speaking of the conversations, notes are not that important in the conversations because they are usually very short, they are easy to understand, the vocabulary is pretty simple. Believe me, it's quite easy to remember the things that were said in the conversations. However, for the lectures, you will need to take notes, and that will be probably the number one thing that you can do to improve in the lectures, taking notes and improving your note-taking skills. Okay, we won't look at this, but we're gonna do some examples where we will see how to actually take notes. Okay, guys? Now, as for the types of questions, well, before we see that, in the conversations, you will have 5 questions per conversation. So after you hear each conversation, you will have 5 questions that you have to answer based on that conversation, so 5 questions per conversation. They are usually 3 minutes long, could be more, it could be less, but around that time. Okay, so 5 questions per conversation. Now, what types of questions do you get? So this isn't as important as it is in the reading to look at the types of questions you have. So we're not going to waste that much time in here. Just as a brief overview of the types of questions you have and the skills you need. So most of the time, the first question that you get right after listening to the conversation is what we call the main idea type of question. And in this question, they are going to ask you about the main idea of the conversation. So for example, it could be something like this. You have some examples in here, like what problem does the student have? Why does the student visit the professor? What is the main topic of the lecture? That will be for the lectures. So in the main idea type of question, they will basically ask you about the main idea of the conversation or the lecture. So as you can see here, it says, don't look at your notes, because the main idea is something that you will remember without even taking notes. It's something that's gonna stick with you. Sometimes you have, especially in the conversations, you have attitude questions that ask you about feelings. So this asks you about emotions, feelings, or the attitude of either the student or the campus work. So sometimes it's like, what is the student's attitude towards this advice? How does the student feel about this? How does the professor feel about the student's essay? So sometimes they ask you about those things. Again, for that type of question, you won't need to take notes because they're not detailed questions. What else? Inference questions, which are very similar to the ones we have in the reading tool. They basically ask you for implicit information, something that wasn't explicitly said, but you can kind of infer from the information you have. So it's something like, what does the speaker or what does the professor imply about this? So what is being suggested? What is the conclusion that you can draw based on what this person said? So again, it's all about logic. You don't really need to have very detailed notes to answer these questions. Okay, so those are usually the most common ones for conversations. And obviously, probably the most important, you have detailed questions too, which ask you about specific details. So these are gonna be like, what time does the professor start class? I don't know. Like how many students are joining the bicycle club? Those ask you about the specific details. What time will the professor be back? What book does the librarian recommend? So those ask you about specific details. And this is the only type of question that will actually require for you to take notes, detailed questions. Because obviously the details are not that easy to remember. It's hard to remember a number, a name, a time, the name of a book. Those are hard things to remember. Now, why am I showing you this? I just wanna, to summarize, I wanna give you a very important tip for the conversations. Honestly, I wouldn't take notes in the conversations except for the details. So the best tip that I can give you for the conversations is please don't take many notes. And the only notes that you're gonna take should be about specific details in the conversation. So you should only be writing down the details that are given, things like names, dates, times, numbers, and those details that you wouldn't easily remember. Okay? That is the best tip that I can give you, because if you focus too much on taking notes, then you're gonna miss the most important part, which is understanding the main ideas, understanding the conversation itself, understanding how the speakers are feeling. So it's always better in the conversation to focus on understanding rather than note taking. Okay, so my best tip would be, only if you're gonna take notes, only do so for the details. Okay. Is that okay so far? Do you have any questions about this? No questions? Okay, and one more very important tip that I'll give you too is, obviously you have to answer the questions based on the information that was given to you in the audio files. You don't have to answer based on what you know or what you think you know or anything like that. But the tip here is, in case you don't know the answer to a question, try to be logical about it, try to reason it out and go to, and choose the most logical answer. You know, when you have the context, when you know what the conversation was about, then it's easier to even guess the questions based on the context. So if you don't know the answer to a question in the conversation, just try to be logical about it. And chances are you will be able to answer it correctly, even if you don't know the answer, because once you have that context, it gets easier. Okay? So for example, let's look at this question. We don't know anything about this conversation, right? We haven't heard. Evie, could you please read the question?
It says, what does the student go to see the professor?
Great, thanks, Evie. We have these four options, A, B, C, and D. Now, I don't want you to tell me which one is correct, because obviously we don't know, we haven't listened to this conversation, but I want you guys to look at the options and tell me which ones you would think make more sense. Okay, so just which ones would you, if you didn't really know the answer, which ones would you feel that are most likely to be the ones? Okay, or which ones you would definitely eliminate and why?
Sure,
Please
sorry.
look at the
I will eliminate the first one to talk about her paper on farming practices.
Okay, you would eliminate A, you say?
Yeah.
And
Because,
why?
if we read question by question, I think the most logical, no, the less logical is the first one, I think.
But why?
For example, they're not talking about paper, physical paper, they're talking about participation, right? Participation. However, farming means that like lands when you farm, when you grow food, right?
Mhm.
So I think this is not a correct word, is the internship, I think. That's why we have to eliminate this one. Or I'm wrong.
But we don't know anything about this conversation, right?
Okay, okay.
So we really don't know anything about it at all. We're just seeing which ones would make more sense based on the question only. The only thing we know is the question, what the question is. So it could be a paper on farming practices. I wouldn't eliminate option A. I think there are others that are less likely to be the ones. What does the rest think?
I would eliminate the option D because it is asking about information and you don't go to ask information to a professor.
Great. Yes, that's right. And that's actually what we were saying in the beginning, right? So in this question, we know that the conversation was between a student and his or her professor. So probably if you're a student and you need to talk to your professor, it's going to be about a paper. It could be about an assignment, an exam, your grades, something related to the class, right? You're not going to go and talk to the professor about like something about the library or something about house. So same thing here, you probably won't go talk to your professor about whether you can become a Spanish major or not, because that's another area that's related to somebody else. You know, this is somebody else's job. So yes, I would also eliminate option D. Great. Which other one?
I will go with B.
Exactly. You would eliminate B?
Yeah, because she's asking something to the teacher that is not about his area. Maybe with
Exactly.
a international department of scholarships or internships.
Exactly. Yes. So this isn't something really that corresponds to the professor to discuss. So probably, as you guys said, we could eliminate, we don't know, right? Maybe they do talk about the studying abroad in Guatemala. But the tip here is when you really don't know the answer and you just have to guess, then you need to not only like take a a blind guess and go for A just because you want. Most of the time, it's not as in the reading. You have enough time here. So if you really don't know the answer because you don't remember, because you didn't take notes, or something happened, then it's better to answer it trying to be logical about it. So in that case, we could eliminate B and D, and we would say that maybe A or C could be the ones. You know, you have like 50-50 here. But it's better than having 25, 25, 25, 25. So that would be one tip. And what type of question do you think this is?
Main idea.
Exactly. It's a main idea type of question. It will probably be in the beginning, the first one. What else? When we have additive questions, for example, and this goes, you know, this is actually a tip for the entire TOEFL test. It also happens in the speaking section. In general, the TOEFL, I don't know, like when we were talking about vocabulary, remember I told you in the TOEFL test, since this is a test that usually you take to apply to a university abroad, it is really important that you guys have one vocabulary related to college life, right? Because if you don't know what a dorm is, if you don't know how university life works in the US, because this is based on the American academic system. So if you don't know those things, then your understanding could be faded away, right? So it's better to always have some sort of context as to how it works in the US, how university life works in the US, to have some vocabulary about university life, and that will help, you know? So that's one thing. And second thing, since in many questions in the TOEFL test, you will find things related to university life, it's important to keep in mind that they're always trying to show the best part of it. So they're always gonna try to show the most, like the ideal type of university life, right? So you wanna consider that when you're answering your questions. Now, in this case, Jasper, could you please read the question? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so Jasper, do you mind reading the question, please?
Sorry, my name is not Jasper. I will say my name, my real name. Sorry.
You're Rainy, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. It happens that sometimes I used to play with my nickname, but sorry. Sorry. My name is not Jasper. Sorry.
Okay,
Okay.
yes, I know. All right,
Okay.
Rainy.
What attitude does the professor have towards the students' work?
Okay, Rainy, thanks. So look at the options and tell me what you think about. So same thing here. If you were to answer this question without knowing anything about the listening or the conversation, what would you think?
I would eliminate letter D because it is talking about the professor, not the student's work.
Exactly, great. Yes, that's a good way to see it.
Right, teacher, I also eliminate letter C. Letter C.
Okay, why?
For example, um, the majority of attitudes are good, and I'm sorry, let me think. For example, the student works, obviously it has to be a good job because they make an effort. Why is the reason? Because he's bored. I think is that.
Okay, good. Rennie, yes, I think I get what you mean. So that's true as well. And that would be the tip, the main tip here. So usually all the attitudes and all the feelings are gonna tend to be positive. You know, so if you have something negative or something too rude, like maybe the professor's upset, the professor's mad, the professor's bored, disappointed, those are usually things that you wouldn't consider. So if you have to guess, then we'd go for something more positive, like he's impressed, he's concerned, maybe. And yes, as Edvi said it too, probably he's not gonna be thinking about writing a book himself because we're talking about the attitude towards the student's work, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. And what else? And also, aside from understanding how university life works, most of the time they're gonna be keeping the academic values. So just to say, if you had these two options, the professor will give the student an extension or the professor emphasizing that the student must hand in their paper on time, B is more likely to be the answer than A. Okay, I'm not saying that B is the answer, but it's more likely to be. Because most of the time, they don't show things like this. Giving an extension to a specific student wouldn't really be fair for everyone else. It will be some sort of like favoring one student only. So it has to be fair. You usually don't get extra time. You don't have extra credit options. So B would be more likely to be the one. And if we look at the other question, if we look at A, for example, probably not, right? She doesn't want to help the student. Remember that the campus workers are supposed to be helpful. So it's never going to happen that they're like, I don't have enough, I don't have time, come back later, or I don't know what to tell you, or no advice. It's usually going to be the campus worker and the student doing their best to solve the problem or help the student. And yeah, that would be the tip here. Okay. Do you have any questions then before we start practicing and looking at some actual examples? Any questions? Guys, so please get a piece of paper and a pen. We're gonna do a practice set and you will need to take notes.
Of course.
Now, how are you guys gonna take notes? For the conversations only, what the best thing you can do for your note taking is, first of all, have organized notes. Because if your notes are all over the place, then you will you won't be even able to understand your own notes. So the best thing first is to have your notes organized. And how can you organize them? I can give you this tip. Let's say this is your piece of paper. You're not gonna need more than one piece of paper for all of the conversations. So I would suggest you have one piece of paper for the conversations, and for the lectures, you will need an entire page per lecture, sorry. So I don't know if that was understood, but in the conversations, you should have just one piece of paper for all of the conversations you'll have, which are gonna be 3 or 4. And for the lectures, you will need an entire page per lecture. Okay, so that can be one tip. And as per your conversations, which is what we're doing right now, make sure that you have the information separated. In one side, you're gonna have your notes for what the student says. So everything the student says or every information you consider is important and is detailed from the student, then you will write it down on, let's say, on your left side. And on the other side, you will talk about the campus work, or you will write down your notes for the campus work. okay? So you're gonna take your notes as the conversation goes in that way. So let's say the student asks a question. The student says, so what time does the library open? So you're gonna write down time, library, and then you will write down the answer that the campus worker gives, right? So you're gonna say, the campus worker, the librarian says, well, we open at 8 a.m. from Monday to Fridays. And on the weekends, we open from 8 a.m. till, let's say, I don't know, 4 p.m. So you're organizing your notes in that way. The student asks a question, the campus worker answers the question, and you write it down in different sides of your paper. Okay? This will help you be organized with your notes. And also, let's say, for example, the student asks a question, or maybe the student has a problem. The student says, so I don't like my roommate, I don't know what to do about it. So you're gonna write down, no like roommate. Now the campus worker may give many suggestions, right? It isn't just gonna be one. So maybe the campus worker will say, well, one thing you can do, so you're gonna write down one suggestion is, one thing you can do is change doors, okay? So maybe that is the first suggestion the campus worker gives. Now, you have to not only write down the information, but I would suggest that you also take notes on how the student feels about the campus worker's solutions. So does the student like this idea? Yes or no, and why? So maybe you're gonna go back and say, well, the student is not happy about that. And you draw like a sad face sticker. Now, why? The student likes his or her current door, right? So you should be going back and forth as the conversation is progressing. Then you may have another suggestion. So the second thing you can do is, I don't know, like, say rent an apartment outside the university. And maybe the student doesn't like this idea either. Maybe the student feels that it's too expensive. So you're gonna write down too expensive. Right, so you're gonna go like that, going back and forth, left and right, according to the information that you're given from the student and from the campus worker. And you should also be trying to have an idea of how the student and the campus worker feel about certain things. Okay, because remember that you have questions like this. So is this okay? Do you get the idea of how to take notes for the conversations? Any questions? No? Guys? So we're gonna do a practice set. Please take your piece of paper and pen. And we will be answering the questions there. Okay. I'm not that all. Okay, we'll just do one from here.
Everything all right, Carla?
Yes, I just wanted to talk to you about the assignment that's due on Monday.
I can't give you an extension if that's what you want.
No, it's not that. I wanted to ask you about the word limit. At the moment, I'm way over it, but I found so many useful sources that I don't really want to cut anything out.
Well, it's meant as a guide rather than a hard and fast rule. It's not as if I'll stop marking as soon as I reach the word limit, but I don't really want you to go way over it either. 2,800 is the absolute maximum, I'd say.
Wow, that's still going to be hard.
Well, you can use this opportunity to try to make your writing more succinct. It's good exercise in writing technique. Think about which of the writer's points you really want to draw attention to and discard any information that isn't really relevant to your premise.
Okay, I'll try that.
Remember, you can always refer to two or more sources in the same paragraph, in the same sentence even.
What do you mean?
If one of your citations seems to complement what the other says, you can refer to them at the same time. You can do that when they contradict each other, too. It's a perfectly acceptable way of constructing a paragraph.
I get you. Well, I'd better go. I've got a lot to do before Monday.
Hang on, Carla. While you're here, I wanted to mention something to you.
What's that?
Have you heard about the Harvey Graduate Business Program?
No?
It's a special scheme funded by the Harvey Group, the financial place in town.
Yeah, I know it.
Well, they have a special program that they run especially for graduates. It's very exclusive. They only take on 3 people a year. Each of the major colleges in the state. Well, they have a special program that they run especially for graduates. It's very exclusive. They only take on 3 people a year. Each of the major colleges in the state is invited to put forward a maximum of 5 students a year for consideration. And we only pick out the very best students, the ones with really high grades. I wondered if you
Hey guys, sorry, give me a second. I'm gonna refresh it. I think we're gonna have to play it again. I'm so sorry.
have you heard about the Harvey Graduate Business Program?
No?
It's a special scheme funded by the Harvey Group, the financial place in town.
Yeah, I know it.
Well, they have a special program that they run especially for graduates. It's very exclusive. They only take on 3 people a year. Each of the major colleges in the state is invited to put forward a maximum of 5 students a year for consideration. And we only pick out the very best students, the ones with really high grades. I wondered if you'd be interested in trying out for it. After all, you've been doing well in all your modules.
Wow, it sounds like an honor to be considered. I guess all those late nights working on assignments were worth it. What does the program give you?
Well, you get work and training at the Harvard Group.
Okay, guys, so I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to please send you the link so that you can hear it on your own computers.
This this web is free, or we have to pay for something?
No, it's for free.
Okay, it's for free. Okay, no problem.
Okay, I just sent you the link. Please listen to that audio file, and then we'll answer the questions, please. Okay, guys, so are you done listening? Yes. Okay. Now let's look at the questions. The first one says, this is the main idea type of question. It says, Carla wants to talk to the professor because, look at the options. We're gonna say we have A, B, C, and D. What do you guys think? This shouldn't take you that much time. Main idea, you just remember. So which one?
It's option C.
Option C, okay. Do you guys agree? Yes. So yes, that's correct. One tip I can give you here is always look at the question and what it's asking. Because sometimes, for instance, in this case, even though it's the main idea, they're not asking about this for a summary, like about the entire conversation. They're asking the reason why she went to talk to the professor. And that's because of the assignment. Of course, they later on talked about a different thing. Maybe they changed the subject, they talked about something else. But the initial reason why she went to see the professor was because of the assignment, right? It wasn't because of anything else. And yes. Okay, question 2 says, read the 6 sentences below. Which 2, we have to choose 2, does the professor advise Carla to do? So this has to do with the advice that the professor gives Carla. So look at the 6 options. We need to select 2 of them. These are the options, A, B, C, D, E.
1 and 3.
1 and 3, okay. Do you guys agree? Does everyone agree? Is it 1 and 3?
Yep.
Yes, it's 1.
Okay,
I think 5 and 6. Okay.
okay, almost. But yes, 1 and 3, great. So definitely making her writing more concise is 1. I think the professor uses a synonym, right? The professor says, well, you could make your writing more succinct. And that's why it's important, not only focusing on taking notes, because maybe in your notes you don't have these as the professor used a synonym, but focus on understanding. So you just know that the professor was saying you should make your writing more concise. And 3, comparing and contrasting info. Yes, they talked about this a lot. So that you don't use many quotations, right? I think, or many citations, and you just use one in a paragraph. So that was number 3. Okay, now question 3 is a detailed question, and it says, the Harvard Graduate Business Program provides young people with. So what do you guys think?
Work in various departments in the company.
Okay, do you all agree?
No. I think it's a total of 2 years employment at a Harvey Group.
Okay, anyone else? Sergio? Edwin?
I can see the last option.
It's a
After,
Me
total.
too.
yeah,
It says a total of 2 years of employment at the Harvey Group. So, Evie, what were you saying?
I said that I think a total of 2 years was the answer too.
Okay. We have 2 people going for that one. And yes, that's so option C, working various departments, is true. I'm not sure if they allow you to work in various departments though, but I think that's like, example, option A, a funded master's course of their choice, and option C could be the one. But in general, the total thing is 2 years of employment, right? So they do allow you to work and they do fund you a master's course. Although I'm not sure if it's of their choice, right? But it's about what the business program chooses. But yes, this is a detailed question. So in this case, it would be important for you to have your notes. Now, this one, on the other hand, is not. It says, listen to Carla. Carla says, Harvey is a prestigious company. I couldn't see myself moving on fast if I managed to get my foot in the door. So what does Carla mean by that? What does she imply? This is an inference question. Harvey is a prestigious company. Couldn't see myself moving on fast if I managed to get my foot in the door. What do you guys think?
The third option.
Okay, do you guys agree?
The last one, I think, once I've got a job at Harvard, I would probably be promoted very quickly.
Okay, Edwin, what about you?
I think third option.
All right, Rennie? You said, right, the last one.
Yeah.
Gamaliel,
number 3.
me too, and Sergio?
Number 3 too.
Okay, yes, it is. So Carla says, basically it's a conditional, right? There's a huge difference between saying, if I manage to get my foot in the door versus once I've got a job at Harvard's, right? Or after I've worked. Because when you say if, like, if it rains, if I get the job, if I do this, then you're open to the possibility. It could happen or it couldn't, right? We don't really know what's going to happen, but if it happens, then this is the result. But when you say after or when you say once, then you're already assuring that it will happen. You're like 100% sure that she's going to get the job. So first of all, that tells us that it couldn't be one of these. Now, second thing, when she says, if I manage to get my foot in the door, obviously she means if she gets the job, if by somehow she manages to get the job, she couldn't see herself moving on fast. Moving on means going to the next thing fast, right? So changing jobs fast, moving on to something else, to somewhere else, to a different company. So if she gets the job, she wouldn't want to leave to move to a different company for some time, right? So she's gonna want to stay there for a while because it's such a prestigious company that I don't think she's gonna want to have a different job after she gets the job, right? So is that okay? Do you have any questions so far?
No, no question.
And finally, we have another detailed question, which says, which one of these does Carla not need to do? Look at your notes, maybe you have it in there.
And send in a resume.
Excuse me. For me, it's complete an application form.
An application form, all right. What are all the rest, Sergio? Edwy?
First,
It's letter A.
Okay. So yes, it is sending a resume. All of the other ones are mentioned. The professor says that she has to complete a form, give a presentation, and maybe attend an interview. And I think this one is mentioned too, but as something that she doesn't have to do because she asks, do I need to send my resume? And the professor answers, no, you don't. You just have to do the form. So careful with those details. As you can see, you would only need your notes for that option 5, for question 5, sorry, and for question 3. The other ones don't require you to have notes, you know? Most of them are just about logic. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions about what we did today? Tomorrow we'll focus on just practicing, so we'll be doing a lot of these. As you can see, it doesn't take that much time. So any questions before we leave? No questions? Okay, guys. It's pretty, would you say, do you find this easy? Do you think it's easier than the reading for those of you who were in the reading section? Yeah, right?
For me, it's not so easy, but if I work hard,
At least
if I practice, no problem.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. And honestly, one tip I can give you, take advantage of the conversations because the lectures are a little bit harder than this. But the conversations, you shouldn't be having problems here. Okay, guys. So please, before you go, don't forget today's survey. And I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow in a practice session.
That's okay.
Okay.
Good night, teacher.
Good night, guys. Take care. Thank you so much.
See you around.
Bye-bye.